we are very excited to welcome Kristin Lia of Kristin Lia Restoration as the host of tonight's webinar. Kristin is a passionate furniture refinisher and educator who loves helping people bring new life to old pieces. She'll be guiding us through the first session of Discover Refinishing, which is a 4-part series designed to help you build the skills and confidence to transform your own furniture pieces. As always, we will be taking questions throughout the webinar, so please pop them in the Q&A box and we will do our best to get to them. Now, I'll turn it over to Kristin.
Hi, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here. This is my first webinar, so please bear with me as I get through this. I wanted to start with just a little bit of a backstory for me. I got into refinishing by accident, literally an accident. I had a concussion and found refinishing as a sort of therapy. It's turned into a passion project where I help to inspire other people that have no idea where to get started into a place where they can refinish beautiful pieces. I remember when I started that I would go on Instagram and I would see these beautiful pieces, and first I would see the creators that had their awful piece and then they would transition to this beautiful piece, but there was nothing in the middle, and that's where I needed the info. I needed to know what products to buy, like the specific ones. I needed to know what exactly the steps that they took and even where they screwed up sometimes, because I knew that I was screwing up. So I try to be that person that kind of shows you the good, the bad, and the hard in between parts that gets you to that final result. I will be referring to some notes just so that I stay on track. So let's get started. So when you're first going to be starting a piece, I have so many people that message me and they say, I have my grandmother's dining hutch and I want to refinish it because I have this idea for it. Please do not start with that because absolutely you will be terrible at it, and then grandma will not be happy with how you've refinished it. I would suggest finding something on the side of the road, finding something for free on Marketplace, or even something that's really cheap at the like a thrift store or an estate sale. It doesn't have to be the style that you like. It just has to be a piece of furniture that you have no emotional attachment to, because there will be something that is terrible that you do to it and you don't want to have that oh goodness kind of moment. So I look back sometimes in horror at the pieces that I've done, the sanding that I did terribly, the things I didn't fix. And this is how you have to get started, because you will be terrible. Let's start that off. And if you keep this, I need to be perfect at everything kind of mentality, you will never get anywhere. This is all about practicing and practicing until you feel confident enough to do that hutch that your grandmother gave you. How do I choose the right piece? So there's going to be a few things that once you're comfortable in your refinishing style, we're going to go through that in later webinars, how to prep your piece, how to apply finish, how to apply top coat. But before that, you need to pick the right piece. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look for damage. So if I'm looking at this piece here, I'm going to look and I'm going to see all of these watermarks on top, maybe some oil stains, and I'm going to think, I don't know if I can get that out or not. So that's one thing you're going to want to look at. Is there damage that you're comfortable fixing? You know, when I open this one, I'm going to see that, oop, look at that. See, this is falling off. Can I fix this? Am I able to use some wood glue? When I first started, I would have had no idea how to fix this. And so these are the things you want to make sure that you're looking at when you're first starting. In there. The next thing you want to look for is what it smells like. Sometimes when it's musty, that's something that can be fixed. But if you pick up a piece, no matter how beautiful it is, it could be the best Broyhill Brasilia, but if it was in someone's house that smoked, that smell will never come out. You would like to think it would, but it will not come out ever. You could put shellac on it. You could leave it outside in the sun. Those are some of the tricks that I do when I have a piece that's musty. But a cigarette smell is somehow like just ingrained in the grain of pieces when you are refinishing furniture, and it won't come out. So if it's a practice piece and you're doing it in your garage, that's one thing. But if you're doing this to keep in your house, to give to a friend, to eventually sell, that is not something that you want to pass on to somebody else or even keep in your own house. The next thing is, if you're going to be planning on selling your finished piece, what's trending in your area? I know in this area, mid-century modern is where it's at right now. Sometimes I see these other older pieces that are gorgeous, but I know that once I refinish it, none of my family and friends are going to want it because it's not the style that they're looking for right now. Those can make great practice pieces, but you want to make sure that if you're planning on selling it, that it's going to be something that you can reasonably sell in your area. And then the last thing is what brings you joy. If you're working on a piece and you don't like it, you don't like what you're doing, that will reflect in the final result. And this is about having fun. When you're doing this, when you're starting out, you want to not be frustrated. You want to look at a piece and be like, oh, I'm so proud of myself for doing that. Um, and that's really what's most important. That's what drives me when I'm doing this. It's not just about flipping furniture. Yes, it's about keeping it out of the landfill, but there's a joy in finding pieces and finding it on marketplace. And I mean, sometimes there's that little bit of a horror when you really want something and then you're trying to battle all the other refinishers trying to buy it. But in that case, you just want to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's bringing you joy. Okay. So when it comes to picking furniture, there's kind of a stigma around veneer. People think, oh, it's not solid wood. It must not be a good piece. There's a few things that you need to know about veneer. So veneer is a more pretty, I mean, there's more woodworkers special terms for it, but I think it is just a more beautiful, more kind of luxurious piece of wood, because veneer is a really thin piece of wood that can be put over solid wood or it can be put over a substrate like an MDF or a particle board. So if you look at this piece here, this was a shelf from a bookcase that I had. And you can see here that there's this solid wood piece in the middle, and then there's this part that's above and below it. And what that does is this is a cheaper wood that they would have put inside here, but then they would have covered it with this beautiful walnut veneer to be able to make the product seem a little bit more luxurious that way, but it's also more affordable and it increases the stability of the final piece of furniture. So how do you know if something is veneer or not? So you want to check the edges. So in this one you can see that there's the wood, and then on top and on the bottom here you can see that there are those very visible layers. In a piece like this is a teak nightstand that I picked up at a Mission thrift store for $15. You can see in the back here this particle board. And what that is that is a more stable material. It won't crack or shrink over time. The one thing is that if you do get water in it, like if it seeps in through the veneer into the particle board, that's where the problem lies. But as long as people use coasters, always a good suggestion, you will make sure to protect the veneer and the substrate underneath that way. Another easy way to check, I'm just gonna put this down here. This is a table that I just refinished or finished prepping. And when it has a gorgeous pattern like this, you can kind of see this lovely diamond in the middle here. You can see that it obviously nature does not grow like that. It doesn't have this gorgeous diamond pattern in the middle and how it is so symmetrical on either side that way. So when I look at this piece, that's how I can tell that there's veneer on top of it. You can see underneath here, whoop, I want that to fall over. You can see underneath here that there is a solid piece underneath. But when you look at the front, it has these beautiful patterns on it. Another one that I just picked up, And sometimes I do this where I pick up pieces and I hope I can save them. This was not easily saved. They must have had something on top, this sort of penny design. I gave it a good sand, but in a circumstance like this, I can either try to apply new veneer. That's a skill level that is still beyond me sometimes. And or I could decide to coat it and then paint it. Painting wood is a huge, source of contention in the woodworking community, but I always say that if it's going to save the piece from being in a landfill, if it's painting versus throwing it out, then paint. But if I'm a firm believer is of if you can restore the wood, then that's what you should do. I mean, it's not my furniture, so whatever your client or you want for your own house is totally up to you, but I find such beauty in this kind of wood, and seeing after I've sanded this gorgeous wood emerge is something that just is very special for me. Okay. Any questions so far that we need to? Okay. Amazing. Well, we've gotten through the big part of how to identify and how veneer and how to pick pieces. So to recap that, you want to make sure that you start with something that you have no emotional attachment to. It doesn't have to be your style, but it has to be something that you can practice on. And when you screw up, not if, when you screw up, that you don't get down on yourself. You just have to give yourself grace and know that you will learn from it next time. Okay. So the next thing is our list of basic products and tools that you would need for refinishing. So I'm gonna put some of this stuff out here so you can take a look at it. When I first started, I had literally nothing. My grandpa had given me a few tips. He was a woodworker, but in general, I had no idea. I didn't even know that when you apply stain, you're supposed to put it on and then wipe it off. Literally had no idea at all. So when I say that I come from having no experience, I mean like zero experience. So one of the first things you want to do, you could get a full screwdriver set if you already have one at your house. I picked up this multi-bit screwdriver for $5 at a Habitat for Humanity. It comes with a bunch of bits that way. If you have, again, like a set around your house, that makes it a little bit easier. Otherwise, I have one screwdriver for all things. I also tend to lose things, so knowing that I just have to keep track of one tool instead of four makes life a little bit easier that way. I always have rags. I get these ones from Canadian Tire. They're the Frank's rags, the bar rags. They're great for washing pieces, for cleaning the insides. And then if you are going to invest in any power tool, my suggestion is to get a random orbital sander. So that would have been a disaster. I started with my DeWalt 5-inch random orbital sander. It has a variable speed on it, so you can go, you can change how fast it goes. We'll again get into this more in the prep webinar next week. But this one is affordable. It was like $100 at Home Depot. And what this did is it just allowed me to keep practicing. I finished so many pieces using just this sander. The other thing you could do is if you get a little bit more advanced and it's something you really want to dive into, this is the Surf Prep 5-inch random orbital sander. This has a paddle, it has different speeds on it, and it's hooked up to a dust extractor. Also, don't sand inside your house if you don't have any sort of vacuum system. I made this mistake. I found a piece of black painted furniture and I was like, I got this. I have this awesome sander that I got. I can do this in my main level. I've recently moved, but in my house, again, I didn't have a garage. I didn't have a shop. I had a basement. I had a back deck. I had my main level. For a long time, it was just my dogs and I. So my entire house became a refinishing space. And I decided that a really good idea was to use my sander in my house on a black painted piece of furniture. When I tell you that there was dust everywhere, it was everywhere. Like there was no surface that didn't have dust on it. I also have asthma, so that's also not a good thing. So please make sure you have some sort of system or you're doing this outside if you are sanding. If you are going to invest in a power tool like this, there are a few things that I absolutely recommend. I recommend using a respirator. This is a really low profile one. I can't remember where I got it, but you want something that's going to filter out those particulates, because once they get in your lungs and they do damage, it is not something that can be repaired. The other thing you want is an ear protection. So this is a 3M one, and it has a Bluetooth in it. And I can listen to podcasts, I can listen to books, probably usually murder books. But I have all of these different things that I can do while I'm protecting my ears, because it does get rather loud. I think my watch always tells me too that I have too much decibels going on. The other thing I use, you can use, you should wear safety goggles. I have glasses, so I typically wear those, but these are ones here that I got with when I got my ear protection. These ones I think have sunglasses and I have normal glasses, just in case there's any flying bits of debris that come up. You want to make sure for that. The other thing that I always wear, these are anti-vibration gloves. So not very many people wear them, and I do, because I found that like these fingers in my hand started falling asleep, and when I did that, it was like tingling up my arm. So these have some sort of little bit of a gel kind of patch on the pad here and in the palm. And what this does is it absorbs some of the vibration that the sander has. And then that way it's not affecting it as much. I'm trying to do, because of my concussion, I'm very aware of how things affect my physical appearance, not appearance of my physical body, I guess. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything I possibly can to protect it. These I got off Amazon, and they are literally the best purchase I got. My physiotherapist had recommended it that way. Okay, so these are all the tools that I typically have at my disposal. I would suggest some sort of random orbital sander for when you're starting out. And then if you have any other um, like you think this is something I want to do, I want to make this a really good hobby, or you decide you want to start flipping furniture. I really like my surf prep one. There's also a 3x4 one that you can have, that I can get. Just give me 1 second here. And what this one does is this one can fit right into those corners that when you have an orbital sander. So think of this is being round. If you have a square box or a square inlay that you're trying to sand, you're not going to be able to get into those corners. Something like this, also you're able to do. More on this stuff next week. I couldn't live without this one, that's for sure. Um, the other thing, if you decide not to use a power sander, and for context, I didn't have a sander, like a power sander, for the first like 100 projects that I did. I used just a sanding block like this. I would rough up the surface, and then I would use gel stain on top of it, because I didn't know if it was something I wanted to invest in yet. So if you're just going to be using like hand sanding, you can buy one of these sanding blocks and then just normal um, sandpaper like this. This can be cut into squares. This usually just has a screw right in the middle here that you can unscrew. This part loosens, you put the sanding, like the sandpaper around it, and then tighten it back up. What you could also do, you just get a normal block like this. Depends how big of a surface you're doing, but you can customize whatever kind of wooden block. You can use a staple gun, attach your sanding paper to it. You want to make things as easy as possible for you when you're first starting, because if this isn't going to be something that you're going to be investing a lot of time into or a lot of money into, you want to make sure that you're kind of just doing the bare minimum to see how it feels for yourself. I remember when I first started with painting, I bought brushes from Costco. I mean, myself now would be aghast at that, but For when you're first starting, you have no idea. You actually have no idea what you're going to like and what you're not going to like. And being able to just give yourself a little bit of a test and to see how you feel about it, how you feel doing it is the best sort of test for it. So those are the tools I would suggest. For cleaning, I always go with Crud Cutter. So for cleaning a product, this I used to use just Blue Dawn, which also works. I feel like Blue Dawn is the solution for all of the cleaning problems ever. And when I say Blue Dawn, it's the Blue Dawn dish soap, the one with the little duck on the front. Very great marketing. But what this Crud Cutter has in it is it has a degreaser in it. So over time, any furniture, I mean, if you do it in your own house, they you're always touching the handles, you're pulling things out, you're putting things on top. There's natural oils in your fingers that will get on those pieces. And what this degreaser does is it really helps to remove those oils before you start any of your prep for it. I always buy the big one. Again, I'm very frugal when it comes to things. So I always take this big jug because it's a cheaper way to do it. And then I buy a bottle from the dollar store. I write on it so that I remember what's in it. And then you don't want to be like spraying bleach on your piece when it's actually Crud Cutter, or when what you actually want is Crud Cutter. And so I spray it. And then again, this is part of the whole prep process. But the one thing is, you want to make sure you have a clean piece before you get started. Again, this is the rags I use for cleaning. And then sandpaper. So with this, when you come to sanding, would want to make sure that you get several different grits. Grits are how abrasive it will come off. So the coarser the grit is, say 80 grit, that's something that will take your material off much faster on your surface, but then you also have a risk of burning through the veneer. Again, topic for next week. So you want to make sure that usually between 100 and 220 are the standards of grit sizes, or grit, the range for that. When I'm done doing a piece, or when I'm done sanding, I always use a tack cloth. So I, again, had no idea what a tack cloth was. I thought it had something to do with horses, to be honest. Um, and what it is, it's it's a cheesecloth, and it has these oils on it, not oils. They're sort of a material that when you kind of rub it on the surface, but you're not pushing down, you're kind of just like rubbing it across like this, it removes the dust. And so you can see on here that some of that, because I obviously did not wipe this down after I sanded it, you can see here that it takes off some of that sanding dust, and again leaves you a more clean surface for when you're going to apply the finish. These, again, being frugal, I got these from sandpaper.ca, and literally they come in a bag, and these are all the offcuts. So they come in these long strips, and I got an entire bag, like 4 ounces of tack cloths for $5. I cut them into their smaller ones like this, and then I put them back in the bag, and they last for a really long time. I mean they last me because I'm not going through them. When you have one of these, what you can also do is, if it gets too built up on one side, is I always just open it up and then use another side of it. You want to make sure that you're not leaving dust behind, but that you're also using everything you can about the products that you have. So I have a couple of, again, when you're first starting, you want to make things easy for yourself. There's a stain where you put on and then you wipe it off. These ones you don't. These are an all-in-one stain and top coat. So my go-to is always the Osmo products. For me, they have a 20-minute open time, and I have dogs. And so being able to pick out dog hair is a really important thing to me. I didn't always have like a specialty area where I did my refinishing. Now that I moved, I do, but I didn't have that before. And so the dogs were allowed to be everywhere. They would be on the couch as I was sanding, as I was applying finish. Yes, Victor.
So there's a question about whether or not you use rubber dish gloves or medical gloves to use some of the chemical products.
Okay. Well, you're jumping ahead on me here, but I have two different kinds. These are both, again, from the dollar store. You would be amazed at the amount of things that you can find at the dollar store. I mean, I am a seasoned refinisher now, and I still go to the dollar store. I can use a combination of these nitrile gloves or just normal dish gloves. I recently did a mahogany set, and when I tell you that I had to strip the finish off a mahogany set, it was my hands were so red and it was like the finish was like thick getting it off. So I actually went through a couple of these. I find these you can reuse them once the finish dries on it. I really try to make sure that I'm using products that are very, very low to no VOCs. So VOCs are volatile organic compounds, and essentially it talks that means that it's something that affects your lungs. And so because I have dogs, because I did this in my workspace, like in some of my videos, you'll see that I'm literally doing this in my front hallway. I had no other space, so or even on my coffee table. And so I always try to use products that are best for me and for the dogs. You can't see right now, but my dog Jack is literally laying on the floor in my shop. And I love having them around. And so being able to use these kinds of products, again, we'll talk more about certain things like furniture strippers next week, but using things that are even paint, there's very low VOCs. I mean, gone are the days of lead paint, thank goodness, but you want to make sure that you're using products that support your health. Sometimes they may cost a little bit more money, but in the long run, it's much, much better for longevity for yourself and for the people around you. So you can either use these Javex gloves or I use these ones if I don't want to get my hands dirty. The good thing is that for products like these ones, this is the Osmo Polyxoil tints, and this is a 2-in-1. So it is a stain, like a little bit of a like not as pigmented as some of their other products, but it is a stain and top coat all in one. Or even this Varathane, this is a golden pecan color. These ones you won't have to worry about using gloves for the chemicals in it, but you also you won't have to be wiping them off. If you do choose to use a stain, honestly, don't go out and buy a new stain. I'm sure someone you know has a stain that they are not using. I have a full drawer of stains that I'm not using. So when you're first going to be trying all of this out, find other people that you know have these sorts of products that you can be like, hey, can I borrow a little bit of that? Because you want to be able to test it out. When you're using the stains that you apply and then wipe off, I always use gloves. Those ones are the ones that are heavily pigmented and will stain your hands for a few days. I also learned that recently with a bingo dabber. They also stain your hands for a few days. It was an unfortunate accident between my nephew and a bingo dabber. When you're using not, so with these two, I would recommend using either a brush. This is just a finishing brush that I got. It's called an Elite brush. I use for the Varathane, I use a brush to apply. For the Osmo product, I do use a roller and then a brush for the edges. Again, this is in 2 webinars. We'll talk about applying finish and the different methods that you can use to do it, but these are not the ones that you have to put on and wipe off. If you were going to be using that, definitely wear gloves. I also need to get a roll of the blue shop towels from my lovely assistant. Wow, look at that. These are blue shop towels. And again, I was like, I have no idea what a shop towel is. Is it a paper towel? This is lint free and it's a little bit thicker that you'll find than a shop towel. And with this one, when you're going to be applying not these stains, the normal stain that you wipe off, what you're going to do is you can either use like a sponge like this one. This is literally a normal kitchen sponge. I liked this one because it has this kind of scouring pad on top. And so when you're holding it while you're wearing your glove, you have pretty much like something that's a little bit stronger to hold on to that way. So that's why I like this one. Or you can use a foam brush. These are just the artist foam brushes that, again, these are all from the dollar store. With this one, I always kind of held it because there's this, I'll take this out so you can kind of see it, but it has this piece in the middle here that's like a plastic piece. And what that does, it gives you something to kind of hold on to when you're putting the finish on. And then when you're going to be wiping it off, this is the shop towel. So you want to make sure, again, we're going to go over this in the applying finish section, but you're going to apply and then you're going to wipe with the direction of the grain. And when I do that, I wipe it on one side. Because I'm wearing a glove, I can do this. I flip it over, wipe it again, fold it over. Again, using all sides because you want to make sure, yes, you're saving furniture from the landfill when you're refinishing, but all of the supplies that you're using are also going to be going into the garbage. There's different there's proper disposal methods when you have, rags that have been had product applied to it. So we'll get that, but you want to make sure that even though you're using all of the products that you're using the products to refinish your piece, that you're also being mindful of the environmental impact that you have when you're using them. Okay, let's take these off here. The other thing, back to tools, which I completely forgot about, are these scrapers. And what these do is they really intimidated me at first. But if we look over here for a second, this is going to make an awful noise. But what these scrapers do is they help you to get into some corners. This is called a Baco 2.5-inch pocket scraper. This is good when you're doing really large surfaces because it has this sort of knob to hold on to. And what this does, as you can see here, put this in one spot so it doesn't fall. You can see that this is slowly starting to come off. You're not pushing down really hard on it, but what you're doing is you're scraping off some of this original finish. Why is this important? This will help you when you're getting into some corners of things. If the veneer wasn't damaged on this and it was with the grain, I could get right up to this edge here. You can kind of see it a little bit here. You can get right up to this edge here, and then you're not getting the sander. So say your orbital sander, you're not wrecking the pad along the edge, but also you're not damaging this wood because think about it, when the sander is oscillating like this, it's going to be butting up against the side here. And then if it's going too fast, it's going to damage this wood that is kind of on the inside right in here. So this part actually does have a little bit of oh, that's interesting. This part has a little bit of a divot in it or a curved edge. And I don't have it on this one, but this scraper comes with different blades. And so there's a teardrop one, but I really like it's like an oval or a pear-shaped blade. And what it does is it sits right into this groove here and really helps. I have not a piece here. It sometimes when you get those older antique pieces that have the flat surface but kind of have a scalloped edge around it, it's kind of like it kind of goes in a little bit of a downward pattern, but it's like there's specific ridges around the edge. I always used to just sand the top and then paint those edges because I had no idea how to actually remove the finish from those really delicate surfaces without using hand sanding. So without taking a piece of sandpaper and really trying to get in that edge. I'm just going to pretend that this is a normal piece of sandpaper. But what you could also do here is you could also just like put this in the groove and then sand it that way. What scraping does is that it alleviates the need for over sanding. You sometimes can't tell how thick the veneer is on some pieces. And the last thing you want to do is sand it so much that you go right through it. We're going to talk a little bit about how to fix that. I am not a pro at that right now. I just got a bunch of products that I ordered from Dover Finishing Products, and they have different markers and grain filling pencils and those sorts of things that kind of help you repair those areas. But you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. But yeah, and the other thing is if you see this, I'm taking this off here. Terrible noise. I'm so sorry. But it helps even for some of these curved areas. Like this is a curved area here. So if you're thinking you're trying to use your sander and you're trying to go against here, it's going to flatten that surface. It's not going to kind of curve to it. That's where that Surf Prep 3x4 sander comes in handy because it has foam pads. Again, I'll tell you why it's like my go-to if you're going to be investing in any sort of furniture. And I don't get paid to say that. I say that because I truly do love what they do. But the scraping does reduce the need for sanding as much. So you could maybe just finish sand it as opposed to really getting a coarser grit. I did get a couple of these, and these fit on your orbital sander here. So they come in different patterns. This one here is an 8-hole pattern. And so like these sanding discs are from Amazon. These ones you can get at Home Depot, the Gator brand or the Diablo ones. The more you're sanding, the more you can invest in like a bigger pack of them. But again, they sell them in assorted packages. So you could, when you're starting out, you could buy one package that has a 100 grit, a 150, a 180, and a 220, just so that you can test them out. This one has an 8-hole pattern. And so you'll see with these that it fits. Let's see here if I can do this upside down. It fits right on there. This one comes with a dust bag. And so what this does is it helps to collect not all of, some of the sanding dust that goes in the air once you're sanding. The other thing you could do is, if this is something you're going to be doing a little bit more, is use a dust extractor. And a dust extractor is different from a shop vac. But what it does is that it helps to take some of the dust that's out of the air. They usually have a HEPA filter on it. I did invest in one that I did not clean, obviously. But you can see here, what you do is you plug in your sander to here, and then when you start it, it will automatically go on or off. The same is true with the Surf Prep one. So if I turn this on, well, I guess you guys don't hear the loudness. I would turn this to on here. You can do it automatically. Oh, that one I didn't plug in. Never mind. Of course that happens. I was outside doing a project, so I brought this whole system out there to do that. But what happens is it automatically will turn on when you're using your sander, and it makes a huge difference in the quality of the air. So that one is an 8-hole. This one is a 6-hole. So what this one has is it has the 5 on the outside and then this one in the middle here. And again, this one with the Surf Prep is something I would recommend if you're going to be investing in furniture refinishing or a lot of sanding moving forward, because you have to hook it up to some sort of system. It doesn't come with a dust bag, so this is if you really want to invest in something. Oops. And this one is if you just want to try it out. You can get the best deal on Amazon or check out your local store. I like to go to, where I'm in Hamilton, Ontario. I probably should have led with that. I am in Hamilton, Ontario, and I use Turkstra Lumber a lot. They carry all of the DeWalt products. And again, it's nice to sometimes be able to put a face to a name to ask the questions to, and see if you have an issue, those sorts of things. I think that's where we are for now. Does anybody have any more questions so far? I feel like I ran through that way more quickly than I anticipated. Maybe I'm talking too fast because I'm a little nervous.
Ernie Henley says hello.
Oh, Garney Henley. If y'all don't know, I did not say this, but I did used to work for the Ticats a long time ago. And we were at the Labor Day Classic this week. And anyway, when I worked there 20 years ago, I made friends with Garney Henley. So, hi, Garney. Hi, Charlotte. When I was looking over the list for this webinar tonight, I saw these names and I was like, I feel like I'm on Romper Room. I could be like, hi, Lawrence. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Heather. I know my friend Heather's watching, and my parents.
So somebody had asked about, just for some clarification, that using the dust extractor is better than what? And I guess
Better than just using a dust bag. It takes so much more out of the air because I never used to use a dust extractor. I just used, and you can use, I did it for a long time. I used a rigid shop vac. I had an extra long hose that I would connect to it. Let's see here. This is the extra long hose that I would use. And then that meant I could leave the shop vac in one section of the basement, or when I brought it upstairs to my main level, I didn't have to move it around so much. And the last thing you want when you're doing a piece of furniture, if you're doing a dresser, you have a 9-drawer dresser. There's drawers everywhere. Sometimes you take the base off, there's handles. You just want to make sure that you're kind of keeping things as contained to certain areas as possible. But the dust extractor really helps when you're trying to like take all that dusting, that sanding dust out of the air. But again, do not sand in your house without some sort of vacuum. It is a bad decision for all of your furniture, for yourself, for cleaning your house afterwards. Oh, yes. So for this one, with my dust extractor for my DeWalt one, so it comes with an adapter and it has an 8-foot hose on it. So when I'm using my DeWalt sander, I can keep that in the one spot in my shop and it attaches right to the bottom part here. You just put it on and then that is what the attachment is here. For why I like this sander the best is because when you're doing edges and things, so when I was sanding along these edges here, the veneer is going to be, if you're going to burn through the veneer anywhere, it's going to be most likely on some of these edges here. Because if you're sanding too much, it's going to start to wear away from the side. And so with this variable speed, you can make it so that it's like a much lower speed of it, and then that way you reduce the risk. The other thing, which I've seen a lot of refinishers do too, is when you get to those edges, you just hand sand. So you would go with the grain, with your sanding block, whatever you're deciding to use. Another question?
Yep.
Okay.
So, one question that's a little bit off topic, but the workbench looks like part of one of those special clamping systems. Do you find it useful?
I do not find it useful because I do everything on the floor. My boyfriend is a woodworker who is asking the questions, and he has this table, and it works great when I'm trying to do certain things. But for me, I'm always moving pieces of furniture. I created these little platforms. I have a stool for when I'm doing like drawers and things, but I literally just set this back up for this webinar so that I had a place to put my stuff. Usually I put sheets on the floor. I have sheets that like, I think this sheet I have on the floor here is from like when I was a kid that my parents didn't want anymore. And I used it. It has teddy bears on it. So it's, again, it's using the things that you have in your house that that you no longer need.
Another question was, is the rectangular type of sander good for use for all sanding, or is there something better about an orbital?
I like the orbital. It removes the material a lot faster. So the 3x4 sander, the square one, you could also think about it as a palm sander too, where you just cut up these sheets and you put those on a square. I find with the random orbital, I think I did a whole blog post about this. It circles this way, but then it has a different oscillating motion, and that's how you don't get any sanding swirls on it. When you have just the square one, it's going like this. This is all it's doing. Whereas the circle one is going like this, but then there's another part that's doing another motion. When you're using a square one, you want to make sure that you're sanding with the grain, because otherwise you're going to get those cross marks on there. When you're using this one, you can kind of go in all directions. So when I do this, when I sand, typically, we'll go use this one. I would, I mean, and this is all personal. I kind of go along the edges first because that's totally the area where if I'm going to screw up, that's where it's going to be. So I'm mostly really careful along the edges, and then I kind of up the speed a little bit. But I could go, I mean, you don't want to drag the sander. Again, this is next week. We're going to get really more into the kind of nitty gritty of how to do the sanding, the pushing down versus the tilting and all the things you shouldn't do. I should actually bring a picture of something I did do, and it looked so bad. So you want to make sure I kind of do like a square first and then kind of fill in with this. Next question.
Okay, Kelly asks, is there some kind of sanding tent or something that you can buy to sand inside to contain the dust that the extractor might miss?
You could, but then you would be covered in dust. Like it's, if anything, you want something that's like a bigger, larger space for the like outside if you're worried about that, because you can be wearing a respirator, you can have a dust extractor, but a tent would just really contain all your sanding dust as opposed to kind of letting it out into the world. The HEPAs are like 98%. So they capture a lot of it. You need to make sure that you're constantly changing the bags, something I struggle with remembering until Victor comes downstairs and he's like, why does it look like a sandstorm in here? But they are pretty good. It's like 98.6% that they capture that way. Oh, and an air purifier. We're going to be putting one of those in here too that really will suck up all that dust, kind of like a tornado into that area. This fun analogy that way. But thanks for the question, Kelly. You know what you can use one of those tents for, though, is they make them for painting, or if you're going to be spraying a stain or a top coat, they make that so that it keeps out any of the debris that's in the air, aka dog hair. Does anybody have anything else? We're a little ahead of time. I'm happy to answer anything that you may need to know that I can answer to the best of my ability.
Where do you buy Krud Kutter?
So you can buy Krud Kutter. Home Hardware carries it. Home Depot. It's a very easily accessible sort of product to buy, but any of those stores that way. The main thing you want to look for is that it says a degreaser on it. That's the biggest thing. They also make a version that's called glossy. They say that you can use it as well to, it's like if you're pre-sanding a piece before painting, if you're going to be painting a piece, what is required is that you give it a good scuff sand, which means, imagine, I mean, for me as a little girl, I would get these brand new Easter shoes and the bottoms would be really slippery. And so my mom would say, okay, go outside and scuff them up on the gravel. And what it did is it just gave it a little bit more of something to grab onto when I was walking. Same applies for paint. If you're going to be painting something, you want to make sure that you're kind of not having this super smooth surface. You want to have it scuffed up a little bit. You can use the glossy I've used it. It's okay to do that with. You can either scuff sand, which means you're taking like a sanding block and you're just kind of like running it up and down the surface, or you can also use a like a bonding primer. You could use a shellac. You could use so like I use Country Chic paint. They have a really good clear bonding primer. Fusion Mineral Paint also offers a they call it Ultra Grip. And what's interesting is once you apply it, if you once it dries, you can feel that it just has a little bit more of a gritty texture, and it just allows the paint in this case to apply more easily to it.
We also have a question about where's Osmo available?
Osmo's available online. They have osmo-store.com. Actually, if you use the code Kristin Lia, then you can get 10% off your online order. Otherwise, they have tons of local retailers. I know in this area, Exotic Woods in Burlington, they carry it. The good thing about going to an actual store is that they can help you answer questions. We're going to get into it in the third webinar, but there's so many different things that Osmo has. These are all the different kind of products that shows the different pigments of them and we'll go through how to use them. And then we're also going to go through all the different application methods. And so between a brush and a roller and a pad and a cloth, when it comes to refinishing, there are so many different things, and not all the things are going to fit what you're looking for. It's all not like, it's kind of like six of one, half dozen of the other. There's so many different ways, and getting the final result, I feel like I'm dirty now. Getting your final result at the end is what's most important. And I think through trial and error is where you will kind of find what works best for you. It's really important to make sure that you kind of test things out. You want to make sure that you're always kind of pushing yourself to see what you can do, what you're not so sure with yet.
So Kelly asks, I sanded a bunch of furniture outside before moving 4 years ago and then got sick. Do I need to worry about it says handprint oils, etc., and resand? It's antique wood. So I think like I think she's gone like she started went a
amount of time,
and then now there's like oils and stuff on it. Should she resand?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend that. It's always good if you've moved or you've done certain things. You never know what could have dinged the surface. I am totally not careful when it comes to things. I mean, we've just accepted that this is how I am. But when it comes to, I would rather be too careful than not careful enough. We'll talk about it next week, but taping. There's certain things where I tape all the time because I don't want to have to clean up a mess later, but I also don't want to be too careful in the moment. I want to be able to apply the stain and not think too much about, oh, it's going to go and spill into the frame of the piece. I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to edges and the insides of things. I think of what I would want if I was getting a new piece. So that's why I'm always cleaning, not only outside, but the inside of furniture too. You'll see this if you go on my Instagram page. It's just Kristin Lia Restoration. But you'll see that when I'm cleaning, I have started getting better at cleaning before I actually sand, but after I'm sanding, I'm cleaning the inside, the outside of drawers, the outsides of frames, anything that's not sanded, I give another clean to because I think of I would want a piece if I was spending money on it. I would want to make sure that it was completely clean, and I think about it as, would I want to put my niece's, she's one, would I want to put her clothes in this? And if the answer is no, then definitely be cleaning again. No more questions? I'm here for another 7 minutes, so take advantage. If you go on to my Instagram page, even on my website, this is not me plugging anything. So very clear, this is a hobby for me. I do this because my passion lies in helping people. I used to work at a hospital foundation, and after my concussion, I just really wanted to keep up that being able to help. And I walk through every single step of the process, and I am not afraid to show when I screw up on things.
Question from Ian. Do you stay away from furniture with structural problems? Example, cracked wood around hinges, broken legs, cracked veneers.
Yes. I mean, as I've gotten more into furniture refinishing, I've learned to do more things. Like I didn't even know what a drawer stop was. And essentially what that is it stops the drawer, fancy title, for going all the way back into a piece. I had no idea what that was. So when I would go to a thrift store or an estate sale, I would make sure that I was testing. And if it went all the way back, I didn't know how to fix it. And those are the things. So there's a few places where I find furniture. Side of the road, best place ever. As long as it hasn't been out in the rain or it doesn't, again, smell like cigarette smoke. So I go there. I go to thrift stores, value in Canada, it's Value Village or the Mission Thrift Store. They have like a St. Vincent de Paul Society that you can go to. And those are hit or miss. But I think if you go often enough, you'll start to see the patterns. Like I always liked going on Monday mornings because things that have come in over the weekend have probably started to be processed and then they'll be put on the floor on Monday. Facebook Marketplace, again, great for finding free stuff. Also great because some people don't know the value of the things that they're posting, but the value lies in who's ever buying it. I bought a credenza for us to refinish here. Would I ever spend $175 on a piece that I was going to gift to a friend or, let them buy from me? Absolutely not. Would absolutely not do that. So it all depends on what your purpose is for it. But for our house, it was worth it for me to spend $175 on a credenza that I was going to keep.
Okay, so Russ asked a follow-up question to the degreaser. Do you need to clean the wood after using the degreaser?
So there's a couple of different ones. So Fusion Mineral Paint has a TSP alternative. You can use that just to wash it off. So TSP, I always thought about it as if you're going to paint your walls, you use TSP. It's an alternative to that. With that one, you just put it on or you like mix it with water and then you clean it and then you're done. I find that the Rust-Oleum's Crud Cutter does a little bit better of a job for me. And what you do is you put a little bit into like, so when I have it in here, I'll put a little bit of the Crud Cutter and that add a ton of water. Or no, all of the Crud Cutters in here. I would spray it, I would let it sit for a minute, and then I would take my rag that's in a bucket of water and I would completely wipe it. And then when I'm done that, I would change the water because you can't even imagine how dirty some of this water gets. And then you get a new rag, new water, and you just do a rinse off of all of it.
Someone gave a mid-century modern piece that they said was mahogany, but there's particle board on the inside. Is it possible that this is veneer?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times it was considered kind of the poor man's furniture that was all solid wood because you would see these beautiful mahogany patterns, these teak, walnut patterns, and they were the high end pieces. Veneer gets a really bad rap that way. People are always like, is it solid wood? Most of the mid-century modern furniture will be a veneer. It's just, it could be a cheaper wood on the inside, but most likely it will always be a veneer on top. That's when you get those really nice cohesive patterns and you look and you're like, oh, across this whole dresser, it looks like it's one long piece of wood. And that's how they were able to do it. A veneer is when they slice it really, really thin, but it is real wood. We have any other questions?
That's it for now.
Okay.
Charlotte says that you make her believe she can do it.
That's the best thing. Those are the best messages I get when I have people that say, I just want to be able to give it a try, and you've inspired me to do so. And I invite you to share that. All of this information, well, most of the basic information I talked about is going to be included in a follow-up email that you'll get. But again, you're more than like, I love responding to people because I know what it's like to be a beginner. And the scariest thing is trying something new all the time. The scariest thing.
All right. Well, that was wonderful, Kristen. I'm also starting to believe that maybe I can do this. That
Amazing.
that was so good. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. We had a great crowd. I did put the link in the chat. I know people were asking where they can register for the next webinars. They are all on our website, canadianwoodworking.com. There is a webinar tab, and under free webinars, you can sign up for the other three that are coming up. I will also put it in our follow-up email, which will include a survey, and we would love to have your feedback so we can continue to improve over the next 3 weeks. Although I don't know if that's possible. That was so cool.
Oh gosh, thank you so much.
All
I hope
right.
my nervousness didn't show through too much.
Not at all. You were wonderful. Okay, I will wrap it up and we will see everyone next week. Thank
Thanks
you.
again, everybody. We'll see you next week.